Morning, BoobTube. Leafs Tampa last night in Toronto. Things have gotten tight. Suddenly, the Panthers have started winning some games, and going into action last night, they only sat 1 point back of the Leafs with one game in hand as well. So, uh, it's gotten to that point where I kept saying, like, the Leafs need to win and take this matter into their own hands. But then they went out and crapped the bed on the West Coast and lost all three games to those California teams, and somehow still came out in front of the Panthers. But the gap has closed, and with Florida having that game in hand, all they need to do is win that, and then they're ahead of them, right? So last night, Leafs were playing one of the better teams in the league, but I like the matchup against Tampa. They're two very similar teams in terms of their makeup, and they always seem to play Tampa well. So I don't worry as much of a Tampa matchup as I do like a Boston or something, right? So unfortunately, I didn't get to watch most of the game because it was my son's theater, one of his big rehearsals before his show opens, and so we were at the theater most of the night, and only got to see the last few minutes of the third period sort of thing. But I was following along on my phone, and I watched the highlights, and the first period, Leafs came out barnstorming. They had 11 shots on net before Tampa even attempted one. Shots in the period ended up at like 17-6, so they came out strong. They took it to the Bolts, and they took matters into their own hands. They did gain a lead in the first, and fortunately it was on the power play, and it was just a simple play too. They got a point shot through on net, rebound came out, Nylander popped it home, Johnny on the spot. So, and that's what they need to do to get the power play back up and going, is just just put it on net, no matter where you are. Just put it on net, and put it on net. Don't shoot it wide so it rings around the boards and goes out of the zone. Just put it on the goalie somewhere. Even shoot at the goalie and hope for a rebound, right? Like, they try all this cutesy stuff, and all they end up doing is, turning the puck over and wasting 20 seconds on the power play, right? So it was good to see they kind of simplified things a bit there, and they were instantly rewarded for it, right? Because their power play had been terrible over the last number of weeks, and they were actually 0 for 14 going into last night's game. So, and for a team that has so many skilled players, the power play, they've relied on it heavily over the last number of years, as they've built this team around all that high-end skill. And so it's just, when it kind of goes in the tank, it's kind of like, ooh, we got problems, right? So that was an encouraging step. Second period, though, things were completely reversed. Tampa took over, and then they had the big period, and were running Toronto out of the rink, and they managed to score as well. So we headed to the third period tied at ones, and the third period the Leafs got it back, and ended up getting a Matthews power play goal early in the period, which ended up being the winner. They had to weather the storm, but Freddie was great. He made a ton of good saves, a couple breakaways even, and the Leafs Matthews goal, like I said, it was another power play goal, so they struck twice on the power play in this game, which is hugely encouraging. It was again, a simple play, not cutesy or anything. They just entered the zone, somebody slipped it down to Marner in the left corner, he went cross crease to Matthews in the right corner, and he fired a sharp angle snapshot home, and there's your winner. So again, nice that they're not being so cute. And the one thing that drives me crazy on power plays now is the whole drop pass in the neutral zone. They drop it back, and then they drop it back, and then the last guy in the zone is the one that carries it in while everybody's kind of standing still. Like, it's just, the whole thing seems bizarre to me. Like, I grew up in the whole dump and chase era, and get in there and bang the defenseman and make them scared for their life, right? Like, that's the kind of hockey I always knew and loved. And this new, like, I appreciate the skill nowadays too, but sometimes they're just taking it too far, and it's like, oh, for God's sake, stop making a drop pass and just gain the line and get in there and work. You only got 2 minutes, like, go, but they managed to make it work last night, and it won them the game with the two goals that they scored were both power play goals, so that's good. Like I said, Freddie was good. Another big news last night is that Morgan Rielly was finally back in the lineup after missing 23 games with a broken foot, and from what I saw, he looked pretty good. It didn't look like he needed to shake that much rust off, so, and that's huge, because he's not only a good defenseman, he's their best defenseman. So he's, for still being very young, he's one of the veteran guys on such a young team. So to get him back in the lineup playing and taking a spot on the D is huge, but then also on the bench and leadership role and talking to the refs and talking on the bench and just having that extra bit of confidence, right? Because they are such a young team, and it was just huge. So it allows the Leafs to shuffle their defense core down. So Marincin was out of the lineup, and then it puts guys like Sandin onto the third pair, where he maybe doesn't have to play as many minutes as he was, and allows him to maybe settle into his NHL career a little easier than playing some higher minutes against some more stiff competition, right? So the whole effect of Rielly back in that top spot on the D is just, there's so many benefits to it. So that was great to see. So now, with CC back and Rielly's back now, I think Mikheyev is really the only guy who's been out long term that needs to come back. So they're starting to get healthy right before the playoffs, and Fred's starting to look like his old self again. So maybe this thing's as close as Florida is now. Maybe they're finally getting it and starting to hit their stride just in the nick of time. So you know what, we'll see what happens. I think there's 13 games left, so we'll see how they fare across the rest of them, if this keeps this keeps going, or if they run into more speed bumps. But that's why they play the games, so we will find out soon enough. So long.